What's going on, folks? So, it's been a long time since I made a video, as usual. I've been reading a lot of content lately about the whole critical race theory and social emotional learning debate that's been going on in the US lately. You know, right-wing media has been hyping it up, and then left-wing media has, literally denied that critical race theory exists, which is very, very silly and dishonest. Sadly, that's more ridiculous than Tucker Carlson. I don't know why you would say it doesn't exist. That's just obviously not true. But anyways, I've read a number of terrible articles that I don't mean to say that they're terrible in the sense that they're very stupid. They're terrible in the sense that they're evil. They're trying to teach you that race essentialism and maybe the nicer term for it is race consciousness is the way forward, which is that you should see everybody in terms of their skin color. Now, I found this article actually recommended in the middle of reading a bunch of horrible articles. I found this, and I thought this was actually better. I don't know the background of the author here, but based on the name, this is just stereotyping, so pardon me if I'm wrong. I'm assuming this person's either an African immigrant, and they do later say that they're a black mother. Down in the article, I think they might be an immigrant or the child of immigrants, so that might affect their perspective more so than a black person born and raised, descended from slaves and everything. But anyways, I thought this was a better article and one that's not really proposing evil ideas. So I'm going to go through it and just comment on it. So, well, I start with the title. Your kids are learning about race right now. Make sure they're learning the right things. That is a very concerning thing to say, but we'll see. As parents, we often want to protect our kids, yes, but talking to them about race isn't something you want to leave to chance. Interesting. Conversations about race are difficult, yes. It's a topic that's so difficult and filled with pain, division, and complexity that many adults do everything they can to avoid them. True. Many white parents feel that the topic of race is one that can wait until their kids are teenagers, if it's necessary at all. True. They'd like to prolong the time of innocence for their kids, free of racial strife and division. True. And I don't think it's a good idea to try and prolong the time of innocence in regards to important, life-altering topics. To be honest, I think you should discuss that at a younger age, but it's true that a lot of white parents do feel this way. Some even hope that by avoiding the topic altogether, their kids will be able to grow up in a race-free world. I think some might refer to a very small number of people. I don't think there's a lot of people that believe they can grow up in a race-free world. For most parents of color, however, it's not an option to postpone the discussion. They need to prepare their kids for a world that often discriminates against them, regardless of their age. True. Race is an issue in our schools, at our parks, at our sleepovers. Sounds like an overstatement, but possible. Your kids are learning about race right now. They're learning from their television, movies, from the internet, from their teachers, and from their peers. With the amount of ignorance and racial hatred in this world, this is not an education that you want to leave to chance. Okay, it's generally agreeable. I've been writing and speaking on issues of race for years, red flag, and its headlines about police brutality, white supremacy, and immigration battles are on the rise. See, this is like, really? Immigration? Okay. I regularly hear from white parents of white children and children of color okay, so we know that she's talking to liberals because, A, there's not anywhere near as many, maybe independents, I don't know, but there's not that many conservative white parents who are like, I really want to talk to a black anti-racist activist about my parenting. But there's lots of white liberals who, they don't know anything. They're like, oh, I don't know how to approach this issue. I'll go to a very controversial person and ask their opinion. It's like, if you're on the right, it's the analog of, going to Ann Coulter to talk about race or something. But anyways, I'm not, by the way, I did say that I think this is a better article, so I'm not trying to hate on the author. I'm just saying, if you're going to, an activist for advice on how to raise your kids, you should rethink why that is, because activists are not normal people. They're going to teach you how to make your kid weird. Anyways, and then you definitely know that it's liberals, because white parents of children of color. Is it possible for a non-liberal white person to adopt a child of another color? Yes, actually that's true. Amy Coney Barrett, definitely not liberal, is an example of that. But generally speaking, it is liberals who go out of their way to adopt a non-white child for whatever their strange motivations are. It's okay. Adoption is great, much better than not adopting. Anyways, who realize they need to talk to their kids about race, but they are not sure how to start. Man. Don't go to activists of any side of the political spectrum for advice on important social topics. They're always going to give you a very controversial and skewed piece of advice. Anyways, okay, your kids are not colorblind. A lot of people assume that because racism is a learned trait. I'm glad she said that. See, this is why I called her reasonable. She's not claiming that, like, infants are hateful or something. So good for her. The seeing race is learned as well, but your kids see race. Most are capable of picking up on visual cues that some people look different than others as early as their infancy, especially if those people look very different from their immediate family that they spend the majority of their time with. Okay, that's very reasonable. I'll never forget the first time I realized how terrified some white parents were of acknowledging race. I was a teenager working at my local bookstore during the holiday season. As the checkout line grew, the chatter from customers combined with the endless loop of and the Christmas music over the speaker system and made for a cacophony of sound. There was one kid standing with his parents in the long line who was fidgety and tired of it. I'm going to skip ahead. Basically, this kid just inappropriately yells out, "Hey, you're black." And her response is, "I sure am," and moves on, and the parents are nervous. Okay, that's the whole story. It's not racist to notice someone's race. It's not racist to see dark skin or a broad nose and realize that it looks different from you. True. The racism comes from the value judgments we place in those differences. Absolutely. That's great. Couldn't agree more. When your children notice racial and cultural differences in other people, it's far better to say something like, "Isn't it wonderful how different people can look from each other and all be so beautiful?" That comes from a good place. I think that's the wrong thing to say because, look, it's kind of proven that people tend to view people of their own ethnic group as more attractive than people of other ethnic groups. Trying to, like, brainwash your kids into something that you're never going to convince people, oh, this person's attractive when you don't think they're attractive. You can't. It's not something that can be argued. Either you feel that way or you don't. Rather, I would say, isn't it wonderful how people can look so different and still be people, or still be human beings, still have the inherent value that all humans really truly do have? We're all the same in the eyes of God. But this is just nitpicking. She still means well when she says this all be so beautiful. But it's just not really what people believe. People have very different perceptions of the attractiveness of different ethnic groups. That's a reality too. Isn't it great to live in an area where we can make friends with people of so many different cultures? I don't think that's great at all. I would actually rather live in a monocultural area. Having done that in Taiwan and Korea, it's better. It's not great that you can make friends with people of so many different cultures. And that has nothing to do with skin color, by the way. Rather than, "Honey, it's not nice to comment on that person's hair." Well, that's good advice too, actually. That's probably the most important advice here, is teaching your kids basic social skills. But yes, race-related education is good too. Your kids of color desperately need you to acknowledge their race. Acknowledge is good, yeah. As a black mom, see, she says that, I've always known I'd need to sit down my children to talk about race. I never expected them to bring it to me first. Around the age of 4, my youngest son started asking me and his dad about race. "Mom, why are there no brown people in this movie?" Okay, so if that is actually what he said, then I would kind of wonder if the parents did talk to her about it. Because why is he saying brown people? I don't know if this is an American. She uses British spelling for things. So again, I'm assuming certain things. If he's an American, he wouldn't use the word brown. Brown is a word that's become very popular in the past, less than 10 years to refer to people who are not white. It's one of these very obvious activist attempts to turn everybody against white people, which I don't think is working that well. But it's possible this boy he's 4 years old. It's also possible he's just using his eyes and he sees that black people are actually brown. That's true, just like white people are like yellow and pink. Like, I am yellow and pink, I'm not literally white. So that's possible. I don't know. And I don't want to assume malicious intent, but that is, in the US, pretty conspicuous. Brown very clearly is a term that political activists have started using. At least it became mainstream less than 10 years ago. Anyways, "Dad, why can't I pick any characters for this video game that look like me?" A lot of black people feel that way, I've seen that. Soon he had similar questions for his teachers and his friends, and as they all awkwardly tried to figure out how to avoid discussing race, my son became more upset. He knew he was different, and this is like the part that I really wanted to comment on when I read this article, and he knew that he was missing from most TV shows, books, movies, and video games, and nobody would even acknowledge it, let alone tell him why. He was being gaslit by adults everywhere, and it was doing him real harm. So, I forgot to pull this up. Let me see if I can find it. Pew Institute. say race is important part of identity. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find this. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so first, we're going to look at this. This is in the middle of a larger article about America's white saviors, white liberals, and why it's not a good thing. But this chart is really useful. It's from down here, the American National Election Survey 2018 Pilot Survey. You can see the sample size is pretty small, so take for that what you will. Something you'll notice, though, is that every group has biases. White liberals are very biased against white people. Negative 13.17 means that they prefer everybody that's not white, basically. They prefer they're not in group. But out of all groups on this chart, black people have the strongest in-group bias. So black people have in-group bias, Hispanic people have in-group bias, this is only 46 Asians, so that's a really small sample size, but Asians have a pretty strong in-group bias. White liberals have an out-group bias, and then non-liberal whites have an in-group bias. But you'll notice that their in-group bias is actually weaker than every other group's bias. And black people, this is not really a surprise if you're an American, but black people have by far and away the strongest in-group bias. But actually, this is another one. Most black adults say race is central to their identity and feel connected to a broader black community. Now that's interesting because I met a lot of black people that say things like skin folk ain't kinfolk. They don't really feel connected to other black people, but maybe the Pew Institute's correct. So I'm going to blow this up a little bit. Black adults are more likely than other groups to see their race or ethnicity as central to their identity. Percentage in each group who say being blank, so their race, is extremely or very important. So you can see for white people collectively have almost no in-group bias whatsoever. Black people, 74% of them say that their race is extremely important to their identity. And that's much more so. You see 74% for black. Hispanic is still 60% basically, Asians 56%, but that's still quite a lot more. The reason I brought this up is, let's go back over to the article. And he knew that he was missing from most TV shows, books, movies, and video games. This speaks to a problem both with an underrepresentation in media of pretty much probably every racial group other than white people, and to some degree Hispanic, because a lot of white character customizations, you can just make yourself look Hispanic. But your child is not missing from these forms of media. You could say people who look like him are missing from these forms of media, but this is it shows that this is something that a lot of black people clearly, look at the data, most black people seem to be exhibiting 74%, strongest in-group bias. Your kid's not missing from the media. He's not there, and I'm not there either. I am not featured in any video games, TV shows, books, or movies. Nobody has ever written a work of art about me. They've written lots of works of art and created lots of visuals with white people. There's white actors, absolutely. I'm not there. And I say this, as you can see, yes, white people don't, view our race as very important at all about our identity. True. And everybody else should also think that way. There's reasons why different groups think differently. I'm not here to say, oh, it's your fault because you disagree with me. But I will say that, relatively speaking, the way that 85%, so the 85% who don't see their race or ethnicity as central, 85% of white people are doing it right. You can be black and also not really identify with other black people at the same time. If you're Asian, you can be Asian and not really identify with other Asian people. Clearly, this is not something that I'm saying to you as like a sneaky white person. This is something that white people are accused of by really paranoid activists, is that we white people as a group are trying to trick people into destroying their in-group identity and bias. I would like you to destroy your in-group bias because it's not helping you. Unless you're a very famous person, you're never going to be in a TV show, movie, book, or video game, and neither am I. It is true that he is not in these forms of media because he's like 4 years old. Nobody is interested in him. LeBron might be in a basketball game, but your son's not. If he's black, no, he's still not in there. That's LeBron. It's not your son. Something we'll see later on that's going to be discussed soon is how individual black people, and I'm sure this is true of many other groups, including white people, not here to stereotype black people, but we'll see this in the article. Some black people feel that they can take credit for the accomplishments of other black people. You can't. It's not your... If a black guy invents something really great, good for him. If you're not that guy, and you're black, sorry, he holds the patent. He's the one making the money off of his invention. He's the one getting the Nobel Prize for what he did. If you are a black person who's not that guy, you're not making money off of the invention. You're not getting a Nobel Prize. Nobody knows your name. You're a completely different person than that guy. And that's really a problem that this child is exhibiting, is something completely unnatural. It's not natural to feel that because people don't look like you, therefore, you're not in the story. Because it's not natural to feel like you're in the TV show in the first place. I promise you, when I see a white person in a TV show, which is frequently in the US, I feel no connection with them whatsoever. If that character then develops into a sympathetic character or something, well, yeah, now I feel connected to them. But it's not because they're white. I sympathize with good black actors in their acting too. I don't really care about their skin color, and I don't feel represented by white people. That's just my take, but I don't really think it's helpful for people of any, I'm just saying black because that's what this article is about. I don't think it's helpful for anybody, including white people, to really feel a connection to people because of their skin color. That's racism. Anyways, moving on. If you are the parent or the caregiver of a child of color, please understand you have to acknowledge their race. Okay, it's good to not pretend. You should be realistic. That's true. Make sure they can see themselves. See again. Obviously, I disagree with this. In their toys, books, television shows, and movies. And make sure that when they ask you about race, that you are validating the experience they're having. I think that just depends on the situation, really. And this is another part that I like. This doesn't mean that you have to get into a long conversation about institutional racism with a 4-year-old who has noticed that none of his favorite superheroes have brown skin, but they do need an acknowledgement that what they're seeing is real, it matters, and the pain it causes them is valid. I'll show you something later. I might have to just edit it in, but there is a elementary school near where I live. I'm not going to say which one because I don't want to dox myself, but they are teaching 3rd graders all about third graders, so 8-year-olds, all about white supremacy, and they're teaching Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility in school, which, by the way, says that all white people without exception are complicit in white supremacy, including children. They're treating white kids differently than other kids at the school. Obviously, that is never appropriate at any age, but I'm glad to see that this person, she's right. 8 is too young too, but yes, a 4-year-old, this is just not really an age where you discuss this. I agree with what she said earlier about how many, they want to wait until their kids are teenagers. Yeah, I think so. Kids are not very smart. You should really wait until their prefrontal cortex is developed enough that they can understand a discussion about power structures. If you teach an 8-year-old kid about white supremacy, all white people are complicit in white supremacy, white people have done all these bad things throughout history, an 8-year-old, black kid is not going to hear that and be like, I really understand this. I understand the complex relation of power structures and intersectionality. No, they're probably going to start hating white kids. Because they, without proof or without being able to understand it, they're going to think that white kids are doing something bad to them. So, yeah, just big agree with the author here. 4 and yes, 8 are just too young. Anyways, for younger kids, try something like, a long time ago, a lot of people used to think that people with brown and black skin weren't as important as people with white skin. That's appropriately reductive for this age group. It's gotten better, true. And a lot of people know that it was a really wrong and unfair way to think, but there are some people who still haven't learned any better. And there are some people who are so used to seeing only white people on their TV screens that they haven't realized it isn't fair, and that their shows would be even better if they had people of all different colors in them. Now, this is again like this is the black woman's ego coming through. And I'm not saying that about all black women. I'm just talking about this particular black woman. I don't think shows are better with people of different skin colors. I don't think they're worse either. I think it just depends on the person's acting skills. Now, there could be a show that's about race or something where, yeah, you want racial diversity. But if I look at like a sitcom like Friends, I'm actually not a fan of Friends, just so you know, but if I think about Friends, would Friends be better if Joey was black? Probably not. If the black actor for Joey were better, then what's that guy's name? I forget his name. You know, if the black actor were better than whoever, you know, played Joey in Friends, then yes, it would be better, but it doesn't really make it better or worse that the person is not white. It doesn't matter. We humans really are truly interchangeable. Having a certain level of melanin doesn't really make you better or worse. Anyways, but we are working hard to help people know better. Yeah. And if we keep asking about it, and if our friends ask about it, it will continue to change. Yeah, that's generally agreeable. I don't really like the idea of people's like mission in life being to challenge racial power structures. I think it's something that should be done when you see someone or hear someone being racist. Otherwise, it's really just a religious crusade against something that, as she admits right here, it's gotten better, is becoming an ever lessening and less frequent problem. But it's still there, so it is good to still keep discussing it and asking questions about it. That's not wrong to say that. All children need heroes of color. So this is the part that I already talked about. Last spring, my older son's high school held a social justice fair. Educators and activists set up to talk to kids about race, religion, feminism, and more. So you already know this is like a white liberal area. A social justice fair. They're talking to children about race, religion, feminism, and more. One exhibit showed artifacts of black history. There were shackles that once held black men, women, and children in slavery, and there was African clothing and instruments. As I browsed the colorful dresses, I heard a teen yell, "Nah, man, you're lying." I turned to see a black teenager at the exhibit of African American inventions loudly arguing with the teacher. "You're telling me a black man invented this? Nah, quit playing." The teacher calmly assured him the black man had indeed invented that. This is good, I like this. The teen then pointed to another invention. "That too? You're telling me a black person invented that too? You're trying to tell me that we invented all this? Nah, man, nah." So this is a learned attitude. You're trying to tell me that we invented all this? No. The reason that this black, and he's a teenager, you know, I'm not trying to be harsh, but I'm gonna tell the truth. The reason this teenager is so surprised by, you know, the idea that we invented all this is because this teenager didn't invent shit. Of course he's surprised. He hasn't invented anything. Whoever the black inventor is, and I don't really care about the black inventors, right? The inventor invented it. This black teenager, well, it doesn't matter what his skin color, but in this case, this black teenager didn't invent it. He didn't do that. This is a weird habit that, according to this article, you know, this black woman has taught her son to think of all black people as a group, and if there's not a single black person in the video game, then I'm not in the video game. As soon as there's a black guy in the video game, oh, I'm in the video game. And now, according to her, this black teenager has the same idea. A black guy invented this? No. I invented this. No, you didn't. If LeBron James wins an NBA championship, he gets a ring. You don't. He gets paid tens of millions of dollars. You don't. It's only his accomplishment. It's nobody else's accomplishment. And this is a learned thing. The reason this is like kind of annoying is because I know this is a culture. I grew up in a very racially diverse area. I went to public schools. I know a lot of black kids that had the same attitude. This is something that black parents are teaching their kids that they've got to stop teaching them. Like, it makes you look selfish and very boastful and prideful about things in which you had no part. Sorry, like, this is a learned behavior. I've never looked at, you know, the light bulb, which maybe Thomas Edison might have stolen that idea from somebody else, but let's say he invented it. Okay. I didn't invent that. I have never felt the desire or the inclination to say, we invented that. I can take credit for that. No, I didn't do that. Anyways, I've harped on this point enough, so I'll move on. The teacher, an older black man, just reached up and patted the kid's shoulder. Whatever. Okay. This young man's education was almost finished before his school showed him that he could be an inventor, before he was told that he could make so many amazing, lasting contributions to society. He needed to see that at age 3 and 4. You know, it's kind of true and false at the same time. In the way that we, especially apparently black parents, talk about race, given this certain framework, yeah, they do need to see that at age 3 and 4. But what would be better is not teaching kids to see themselves in people of the same skin color. That's very divisive. It's that artificial idea causes kids naturally to break apart on racial lines. Stop that. Again, I cannot emphasize this enough. I promise you, maybe you don't believe me, maybe you think I'm lying to you. The Pew Institute is not lying about this. White people, 85% of white people really find nothing significant about their race in terms of their personal identity. We really don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much more clear I can be about that. These aren't my statistics. Anyways, he needed to read it in his textbooks in 2nd and 3rd grade. Yeah, I agree with that. I think really when it comes to, like, because there's a lot of put-downs towards black people about black intelligence and accomplishments, it is good to put this in front of black kids and show them, like, you know what, you can be like that. They shouldn't be telling them that you can take credit for their accomplishments, because you can't. But they should tell them that you can have those same kinds of accomplishments for yourself. That's a good thing. So I agree with her on that. And as my heart broke for this and so many other kids of color who are told by the rest of the world that they are not inventors. Okay, see, it's like she says something good, and then, like, what? Who are told by the rest of the world. What an awful thing to say, really? Because the rest of the world kind of sounds like everybody who's not black. I don't say things like that. I don't think most white people are like, yeah, black people have never invented anything, never explored. They're not leaders, really. She wrote this in 2020, by the way. Obama was elected in 2008. Who on earth is saying, like, black people can't be leaders? Apparently, it's the rest of the world. You know, I think this is just a little bit of reflexive hyperbole on her part, but, you know, do better than that. They also, and by the way, white people en masse voted for Obama. So let's not pretend that that was like the black vote overcame the white vote. No, that was black and white people in a landslide election agreeing they wanted a black guy to run the country. No, but that's just not true, what she's saying there. They also had no clue of the amazing things that their friends of color could be. Well, that could be true, yeah. They had no clue of the beautiful legacy of their non-white friends and classmates. That's very true. That's very true. We don't learn enough about the history of the world. You know, I'm not here to propose we need to learn about black history specifically, but really just world history needs to be discussed much better. And I think that for their part, left-wing social activists are horrible about talking about the world before 1492, which is the year that Queen Isabella dispatched Christopher Columbus over to the Americas. You know, Europe was kind of a backwater before 1492. Like, it had been building up strength, obviously, up until that point, but you know, just 200 years before that, they got their butts kicked all over the place by Genghis Khan, who created the largest empire in the world. That's not a white man, he's from East Asia. And after the Mongolian invasion, because of it, Europeans suffered the Black Plague, which killed a third of Europeans. Europe was in a rough state, really, before colonialism. And people don't seem to understand that. They think that, like, white people have been dominating the world and colonizing it for as long as human history matters. Not really. Actually, most of human history occurred before colonialism, and it's very interesting. Schools should teach about that starting in middle school. Anyways, your kid, no matter what their race, needs heroes of color. Who is in your kids' school books? Who's in their comics? Who are they seeing in the movies you take them to, or the television shows you watch? Who are you inviting over for dinner? The fact that there are many amazing black inventors and Asian American, I'm going to pretend she didn't write that, Latino, Middle Eastern, and Native American in our history should not be a shock to your kids. They should know that children of all races can accomplish great things because they see people of all races accomplish great things. Okay. When horrible things happen, empower your kids to make it. This is good. You know, empower is a word that's associated with a lot of dumb things, like empowering women to, like, take their clothes off or something. But it is good to feel like you have some control over your own destiny. This is something that goes against, actually, a lot of left-wing activism and concepts like white supremacy controls the world, and so if you're black and you're poor, well, that's because of white supremacy, over which you have basically no control. That's a very depressing message to give children, so I like what she's saying. Yeah, empower your kids to make a difference. When everyone is discussing headlines around racial violence, like the killing, see, this is weird. She wrote this in 2020, and she's referring to events that are many years back. I guess, and when exactly did she write this? Yeah, she wrote this after the shooting of George Floyd. Good for her for not bringing that up. Anyways, when everyone's discussing headlines, the white supremacy marches in Charlottesville, that was years ago when she wrote this. The killing of counter-protester Heather Heyer. Yeah, she didn't actually get killed. She got, like, hit with the car, but she died of, like, a heart attack, and she was super obese. Anyways, your kids are likely to hit. She shouldn't have been hit by the car. You know, that was evil. Your kids are likely to hear about it and have questions. They may even feel unsafe for themselves or their friends and their family. If your children are white, this is a good time to help them build empathy by discussing how these events might be impacting their friends and classmates of color. True. Yeah, my parents are very nice people. I don't think that they, just without, thinking about it, they're white people too. They didn't really try and teach that to me, and I think I had unnecessarily low level of empathy because I hadn't been encouraged to think about it. Some of the kids in your class who are black might be, yes, this is all about like black versus white. It's like we're in the 1960s. Some of the kids in your class who are black might be feeling very unsafe now after hearing that someone was killed for looking just like them. Well, we don't really know how the Trayvon Martin killing went down, so that's a dishonest way of framing the issue. I mean, we know that the crazy guy who shot him did have, like, wounds on his head and everything, and it's on camera, so there's clearly a fight before Trayvon Martin got shot, like, whether it was in Zimmerman, that's right, whether it was in self-defense or whether he picked the fight and whatever. Obviously, he was physically endangered by Trayvon Martin. He still started the fight. Like, clearly George Zimmerman started the fight, but killed for looking just like them might be a little excessive. This is one of those things where, like, people hear a headline, they're like, oh, that's totally true. Anyways, conversations like this can help kids practice seeing outside their own lived experience and to see that important issues are not the only ones that impact them directly. Oh, that's very good. But don't just leave it at empathy. You can help turn fear and despair into hope and empowerment by showing your kids how they can make a difference in their community. Follow up with something like, and this is why it is so important to stick up for your friends if anybody at your school tries to treat them badly because of their race. That's true. I would really phrase this as, like, picking on them for something they can't change about themselves. That's the real lesson. This obsession over race it's kind of ignoring that race is a social construct. It's completely artificial, and it was created for the purpose of controlling people and their minds in the first place. Anything can become a social construct and be used to control people. If we ever move past race, something else is going to replace it. And really, political denominations have really started to replace race in this country in terms of how people are controlled, and they think about those MAGAs, the Trumpers, and then on the right we have those liberals. Like, that's replaced race. People are much more hateful nowadays around political ideology than they are about race. But anyways, it's important to show your friends that even if the world seems scary, that they are safe and loved at school. And all your friends can help learn from your example that we have to stand up for each other and that being mean to someone because of the color of their skin isn't okay. True. Now, if they're an asshole, you can be mean to them. Anyways, my 9-year-old son can feel very scared and powerless. He sees headlines about kids like him who have been killed. He hears about racist marches around the country. There's not really a lot of those going on. I don't know why your 9-year-old's hearing about that, but I saw him Googling, what is white supremacy? Yeah. This is more an issue of her not really controlling the information that's presented to her children, which is her fault and a failing as a parent. What do you mean? I saw him Googling. Why does your kid, he's 9 years old, why does he have access to Google? He can find pornography and, like, all sorts of horrible stuff on there. You shouldn't, like, incidentally walk in on your 9-year-old with Google. He shouldn't have access to that, aside from school assignments which you supervise. I think she is generally actually a pretty good parent doing her best. She should do a little bit better. Your kids should not have free access to the internet. Anyways, it's very easy for him to feel like the grown-up world is letting him down. There's nothing he can do about it. I think a lot of that has to do with this woman's parenting. Like, where would your 9-year-old kid get the idea where is he hearing about white supremacy? Where is he hearing about that? I don't know. I truly don't know the answers to these questions. I remind him that even though he can't do much about the grown-up world, he can do a lot about the kid world. He has friends who love him and think he has great ideas, and he can talk to them about how they can all make their classroom a place where all kids feel safe, respected, and appreciated. That's a good thing. I explained that it might not seem like much now, but he and his classmates are going to be the grown-ups making the decisions one day. True, so they can start learning how to make better decisions now. Very good life lesson. See, I like this because just like we talked about before with how some left-wing ideas disempower black people. White supremacy controls society. You're a victim. I guess white people need to stop being racist. Is not helpful. She's all about teaching her kid that, at least to some degree, they're in control and they can make the future better. What a great lesson. It's literally one of the most basic yet most important life lessons you can teach a kid. I do like that a lot about her. Just needs to keep her kid away from the internet. And that really is what it's all about. Our children will be inheriting this world and shaping it in their image. We see our kids as perhaps future lawyers, doctors, and presidents. But do we see them as people working for equality? See, I like that, equality. She's not working off of that nebulous term equity, but they're working for equality, justice, and love. Good for her. Just as we don't neglect to teach our children math and hope they'll become physicists, we can't neglect to teach our children anti-racism and hope they won't grow up to be racist. These are important skills for your children to learn, and it's never too early to start teaching them. So I judged her too early because I didn't notice this earlier, and this is why we don't judge people. Shame on me. She published this in August 2017. So that's why she was talking about Charlottesville. That makes sense. Okay, well, that's why you don't judge. My mistake. Yeah, see, anti-racism. When did Ibram Kendi's book come out? Because it's like how to be an anti-racist. Yeah, so she's using this term before it became this like really politically charged term that really refers to Ibram Kendi's book. Because nowadays, if you use anti-racist, you're talking about Ibram Kendi and his ideas. But in 2017, you weren't. So, yeah, I mean, this is a person who I think you gotta keep your kids away from Google. Or any search engine. Just no free internet access. They don't need it. They really don't need it. But I think she's a good parent in general, and I think that she has good intentions. And I'm glad that I saw that little note, and that's, again, shame on me for judging too early. Because now I know that when she uses anti-racist, she probably wasn't using it in reference to Ibram Kendi's ideas. So it used to be a more general purpose term, meaning I'm just against racism. So, I mostly agree with this article. That's why I brought it up. I critiqued it, but like I said at the beginning, I thought it was a genuinely good article. So, we're at the end here, really. I don't really feel the need to keep commenting on this, so thanks for watching, and please leave a comment, like or dislike. I don't really care. Either one triggers the algorithm, but yeah, please leave a comment, tell me what you think, and tell me if you want more of this kind of content. See you later.